Greetings, this is Dr. Mike Yuan. As we gear up for the first ever online teaching of the famous Yang Family G pressing power pushing training, which includes the 8 agreements or not doings, I would like to share with you the strategy behind the recommendation that you invite your wife to be your practice partner. Now, wife, of course, is a figure of speech, meaning spouse or family or close acquaintances, people who you have ready access to on a daily basis, so to speak, and who would be willing to engage you in this brand new learning repertoire based on the other Chinese research that I've been doing that beyond Taiji Chuan has captured the higher learning culture of ancient China, which most markedly acknowledges that the seed essence of learning was understood thousands of years ago, yet the application of the learning through Confucius continued to evolve well into the 1800s. So Yang Luchan was part of a cultural zeitgeist that, most notably from my research, was known for 3 advances. One was the recovery of the highest standard. The second was the differentiation between women and men, masculine and feminine learning, and aspects of the human body. And the third is something called Fen Kai Lian Qi, which is separate parts training. And you see each of these features in the classical Yang Luchan system that Yang Shouzhong inherited. Not sure whether anyone else besides Yang Shouzhong received the complete system transmission from Yang Chengfu. So what we have here in the G power pushing training is quite extraordinary, and I wanted to make sure that it was represented in the right way. And as I've mentioned in my 4 concerns video, from what I've seen, it hasn't been given its due treatment that would cause the public to say this is truly an extraordinary work. It's been reduced to a martial art pushing type of contest, and that's hardly what Yang Shouzhong represented or intended to teach, in my belief. My initiative with Advanced Yang Tai Chi Corrections is one project that I'm running under the Advanced Human Training Higher Learning platform that was derived from a women's transmission from ancient China that bore the qualities of a woman's take on reality, a woman's interpretation of Chinese science and medicine and self-cultivation. A lot which I think you'll find new, but I wish to say not overwhelming, because the nature of the feminine learning is about body wisdom, which is self-evident in nature. In other words, you have it in you, you just need to direct your focus on it, and it will become self-evident to you. And that's why I've even created a new field of psychology surrounding this that I call second learning system psychology, or attentional psychology. Attention being the learning system that the Chinese were aware of and used, but didn't give a scientific name to. So attention versus intention. Yi, or intent, is given so much play in the Tai Chi world today, whereas what I referred to in my 4 concerns was that this inquiry is saturated. It's a good thing, because when you saturate an inquiry, it naturally changes. The Chinese would say Yang Ji Zi Yin, which means when Yang reaches its extreme, it turns to Yin. So we're at an age even that is supportive of this new inquiry on Tai Chi, on what learning is in Taiji Chuan and self-cultivation. My mission, therefore, goes beyond just Tai Chi, but to understanding traditional Chinese culture and the higher learning culture in particular, with the focus on human character and how that relates to medicine and human action. A lot more to come with that. To keep our focus on the up-and-coming program, there are three features that you will find. One is family style, and this refers to the idea of a family style versus a not family style, an in the door versus a not in the door teaching. And with the help of the internet and the new consciousness on the planet, I feel that a family style transmission is possible to give to each and every one of you, and not restricted to just who you know in your local community. This is a very, very important point, because in order for us to elevate the consciousness and the practice of Tai Chi in the world, it's not going to succeed if we fall back to the what I call provincial social format, where the people who live physically closer to you become the major beneficiaries of the work. So the nature of the family style, all you need to think of is child raising. If you can imagine Yang Shouzhong was treated when he began learning from his father and family members at the age of 7. This whole idea of having to be punished to take 1,000 falls in order to earn your way to not only the information but to actual skill is certainly not something that was employed in the family. Yeah, you had to do your discipline, but when you're starting out at 7, certainly not. So let's keep things in developmental perspective. When you're a child, you're positively reinforced and you're nurtured. And the natural tendency children have to play and to imagine the superhero versus the enemy. And when kids come together and play, every other day they can switch off the different roles and they play that out all the way, but then they forget about it. And this is really the kind of setting we want to create to give you the comprehensive methodology for the G power pushing, which I've added the short power training to as a yin-yang complement. And it goes on, which you'll learn about in the presentation of the 8 agreements framework that's vital to make this inquiry whole and updated. So there's a lot more to say about the family style, but just imagine how much intelligence and care is applied to the raising of a child. That's what a parent does. You think about your child every single minute and what would be best for their development. And certainly, if you're aware of the body, you don't want the body to go through adverse stress when it's young, so as not to create trauma and let the body and the mind and the spirit and emotions grow naturally, like you would raise a garden. It's really the garden analogy that we're referring to here. Another feature of our feminine-based learning platform comes from my 30 years of teaching women side by side with men, and also, of course, the transmission I receive from the traditional Chinese women in China. The fact that women learn differently than men is not based on a ladder style of hierarchy, not based on outer performance, but more on inner quality, more based on relationship, which is not just social, but more important, it'd be your connection with your own body. And that's really why men pursue such cultivation in these hundreds and thousands of methods that are developed. Basically what we're after as men is to try to get in touch. But women are already in touch on some way, so their learning trajectory and learning goals are entirely different. While Yang Luchan was out in the imperial palace, his wife and family were at home in the village. That underscores the difference in that the focus in the village and the family is on the development of children and raising of family for the long-term gain. If you add how a woman would cultivate, or how she would even have to look more closely at a woman's nature. One example that really stands out for me right now is sparring with women, even those who have received the traditional training. in the body mechanics, let's say, of striking. When it comes down to it, the emotional content rules, and the desire to either defend herself or to inflict damage on another person, a woman's ferocity and the way that she would move her body to achieve her goal would not be as restricted as it is for we men. Women's idea of mechanics and how she moves, how she chushos, how her hands come out, are different, fundamentally different than men because of her physiological and nature differences. And when you look at Yang Taiji trend, you see there's a lot of this feminine quality in the hand patterns and in the strategy. We'll definitely go much more into this in the actual training, but I wanted to give you an idea that the way we are taught to believe is right is not necessarily the only way to get to the goal. And so we're going to open that up in a large fashion. And it's another reason to invite your so-called wife, again, it's a figure of speech, who may not have the training or the background, how she is actually the more ideal partner for you, because what you'll be learning is not found in the conventional Tai Chi. This idea of yielding first is actually quite opposite of what the Yangs taught with this Ji power pressing, where the first impression is that they're resisting. And that gives you the idea of Pang. The general idea is that Pang is a yielding move, whereas to develop the ability to yield is in direct correspondence to your ability to expand and propel with that same hand. A third benefit that comes from inviting your wife, working a more feminine learning style, is that it's not based on external performance, but based on inner character and relationship. And that could be a tremendous healing element, especially for older men, to use a children's learning style, which will help you go back to your early life, where you were more natural. Practicing in this way will help you relive your own childhood and your body and your mind and your spirit at that time. So the healing element of this approach should certainly not be underrated, but maybe should be placed near the top of the list if you're inexperienced, middle-aged, or older man who's done martial arts. There's a lot more discussion on this revolutionary approach to learning Tai Chi. We will be utilizing it immediately in the 4-day, 10-hour intensive, not to speak of the trainings that follow from that. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already done so. Feel free to leave a comment or ask a question. Join my free Advanced Young Tai Chi Corrections Facebook group and share this with your colleagues. Let's build this new consciousness around Yang Tai Chi together. Thanks again. This is Dr. Mike. We'll see you later.